instructional technology. Tracy Boyles, Director of Early Childhood and Elementary. And for a few years, I actually wore her hat in addition to technology. So I have a little, my background is elementary and early childhood. Dr. Mark asked us to present on a kind of a unique school configuration that is something that tends to be used when schools are consolidating and rezoning. When you've got issues like we're dealing with, or when you've got to add a school and the rezoning makes it a complicated issue. And so I'm going to speak to this configuration first through the lens of a parent who went through this. And then Tracy's going to talk about some of the research that we pulled and pros and cons. But the configuration is moving to a K-2 and a 3-5 school instead of 2 K-5 schools. So you have an early childhood school and an elementary school in the same kind of community. And I live in just right over the border near Forest Acres, but we're actually closer to Sleep High. I know.
It's like a totally different universe.
It is. And people say, oh, you're not from here. I'm like, I live 2 minutes from Easley High School. But we're in the Powdersville area, and so even though we're kind of really much closer to Forest Acres and Easley High School, our kids go like 10 minutes away into Powdersville. When we first moved to where we live, we were zoned for Hunt Meadows Elementary School, which was a new school. And that population there, just as easily Powdersville, that area is growing. And so this was, my kids are in college now, so this was many years ago. But the Anderson one had to deal with kind of a growth issue in rezoning, as we're dealing with in this particular Pickens area. Kind of losing some population, and the migration in our county is taking place more toward Clemson and that, again, that Easley-Powdersville area. But when my kids were in kindergarten, they went to Hunt Meadows Elementary School, and the Anderson one was rezoning that area and building a new school in Powdersville. And if you're all familiar with that area, Concrete Elementary School was the Powdersville school. Community school, I think about maybe 500, 600 students. And that area was just growing tremendously. And Hunt Meadows, when they built it, it filled up immediately. Right there, it was very close to Wren, very close to where Easley High School is today. And so they were building another school and eventually going to add Powdersville High School. And so their issue was zoning. And so I know this isn't a map, but if you imagine this line is the border of Anderson and Greenville County, the land that they owned was right here, right on the border. I mean, you could practically walk to Greenville County from the school in just minutes. And Concrete is a mile away here. And where everybody lives was over here. So to rezone this population and say you're going to go past Concrete and you're zoned for Powdersville was a challenge. And on top of that was the challenge of the culture of that community, which was very much a Powdersville, we love Powdersville, and they didn't want to split into 2 different schools. So the parents were pretty adamant that what they wanted was just kind of one larger school, but it just economically wasn't feasible. So what they did was make a early childhood school at Concrete and then a Powdersville school as 3rd through 5th grade. So the 4K, 5K, 1st and 2nd at one school. And that kept the community intact. And Tracy's going to share some of the pros and cons, and I can just speak as a parent and ask my husband, what did he like best and what were kind of the, it was a little bit of a struggle about that configuration. And I will tell you, when our kids were at that early childhood school, we just loved it. We just felt like they were treated so well, and it just was developmentally appropriate, and they had the playground was just for them, and we got to know everybody in the community. It kept that community, we played t-ball with all these people and all these things, and it kept the community intact. And then we went to, the elementary school and the middle school, and they were all in proximity to each other as far as driving. The only really negative, which Tracy's going to talk about, for us as a family was when Andrew was in kindergarten and the twins were in 2nd grade, we had one school. And then when the twins were in 5th grade and Andrew was in 3rd, we had one school. And then the rest really didn't matter. 6th and 8th, they were one school, and then 2 grades in high school. But we lost 2 years where they would have been all in one school. So you have that extra kind of travel between another school. And that's, again, we found in the research, really the biggest criticism from parents is the kind of the extra school. But there's a lot of advantages that we found as just from a parent perspective, and we really, really loved keeping the kids all together. So they had 250 in their graduating class when the twins graduated, and they'd been together since first grade, because kindergarten they were at Home Meadows when they had rezoned, and they knew all 250 kids. So it wasn't that they were really split. They went to the same middle school, they went to the same high school, and it was very intact. And I know every community can't do that, but as a parent, we saw a lot of advantages to that. So Tracy's going to pull some research.
An advantage for us, though, is we already have the buildings. We don't have to build anything like they did.
That's exactly right.
They had to build a new school, and they were able to pull it off. Here we have surplus buildings. We can do most anything we want to.
Right, it's just an issue of kind of the zoning challenges, and
Yeah.
Tracy's going to kind of address it. And I'm going to drive for her while she talks. And we've kind of worked on this research together along with Sharon. Sharon Huff kind of has overseen us looking at this research and given some input. And we've gathered input from this presentation from all over the country, just different research and conversations with school districts around the country. So.
All right, so first we started with factors to consider. As we looked at the research, what factors did they consider when they were looking at these types of configuration? Student travel, the cost and length involved there, either an increase or decrease of parental involvement, the number of students at the various grade levels, as far as looking at the course offerings, the effect of the school setting on the achievement, the number of school transitions, which Barbara mentioned, that a student would experience, the opportunities for interactions between the different age groups, and then just asking, is it difficult to draw lines for two K-5 schools? So the research on the configuration, what we found is there really wasn't a defined answer for the most effective grade configuration. There wasn't anything that suggested K-5 was the best, or having K-2, 3 to 5 was the best. Each community and school district, when considering these things, takes different factors into consideration. So no one configuration really was best for all. And then the researchers agreed that generally the quality of the school and the instruction overall was the most important when you were looking at academic success. Again, simply changing the configuration did not do enough to increase the achievement. There was no clear indication that any grade was more successful. No particular sequence of grade spans seemed to be a perfect or guaranteed student achievement correlation. And then again, the greatest implication came out of the student success being influenced by the leadership of the school, the classroom teacher, and just those daily instructional strategies, regardless of what the configuration was. The studies that we looked at did focus on that transitional side, the fact that in one sequence you have 3, and the other sequence you have the 4. And these studies did suggest that transitions may have a negative impact on students and should be minimized. The longer students stayed in one school, the more relationships they were able to form with teachers and other adults. So, that provided a stronger support system and likelihood of success. So characteristics then of quality schools that we looked at, clear and shared focus, high standards and expectations for all of the students, effective school leadership, high levels of collaboration and communication amongst the school, curriculum, instruction, and assessments that were aligned to state standards. Those were really the factors. Frequent.
I can say that again. I didn't understand why we talked about it. Say that again.
As far as looking at a quality school, so it really wasn't, when we were looking at the research, it really wasn't about how were their grade levels configured. These were the elements that constituted it being a quality school. So these 5 bullets here, and then there's a little bit yet on the next slide.
So you can do a K through 12, and if you had all those bullets
Correct.
correct,
Yes.
you could have a great school in K through 12.
Yes,
I got
yes. The other characteristics, frequent monitoring of learning and teaching, constant evaluation of what your practices are and are they effective. Focused professional development for the teachers as they deliver strategies. A supportive learning environment, creating that culture of warm, welcoming environments that set students up for success in their learning. And then high levels of parent and community involvement. You know, schools that are quality have that high level of involvement. But again, there was just no clear indication that any grade sequence in particular translated to success.
Did we measure that anyway, the levels of parent community involvement? Do we have any type of measuring metric that we
The
use?
schools measure volunteer hours, they measure parent-teacher conferences, so there's a variety of ways we measure it, and it gets reported on the school report card.
Do we have an award for that?
Yeah.
I think each schools do different things.
We don't have a district-wide award?
Not at this point.
I mean, not to drop competitiveness of parent schools, but, you know, why not?
Yeah, celebrate.
We
I
can
think
name it
we-
after somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah. We worked in a football game every year for 30 years.
exactly.
Sure.
I think we need to put lines in the budget.
Yes, I feel bad for y'all.
Look, if you can put them, you can put them at the career center. Oh my goodness, look at those space over there.
Okay, so we, now we'll just kind of compare and give you information on what we found on both systems. So in the K-2, 3 to 5 structure, it allows for you to narrow the focus on the curriculum for those specific grade bands within that building. You have a larger number of teachers to collaborate with on grade level. So like right now in our, if you think about K-4, for example, it's one teacher per site. In a K-2 kind of situation, you'd have multiple teachers that could collaborate and work together.
Yeah, so like it, I think is it Holly Springs where we only have one teacher for a grade level?
Almost.
Same at Dickinsville.
Yeah. So that teacher, say they're a second grade teacher, they don't have anyone to collaborate and talk to and, you know, benchmark, bounce ideas off of. Whereas if you had a K through, or a 3 through 5, there might be a half dozen
Right.
third grade teachers. That's a good point.
I'd say that issue has come up a number of times with the schools. My kid doesn't get along with his teacher, but she's only got one choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that next point, actually, that it gives more opportunities for a principal to match students to teaching styles.
And that's one of the big advantages of especially when you have very small schools with not as many teachers of the same subject or whatever. And as a parent, I mean, you know that sometimes you just, for whatever reason, you just clashed with the teacher. And you're just like, your next kid, I don't want my kid in that. I mean, it's terrible, but sometimes that, that happens.
But there's the opposite of that too, right? Like Tammy Day over East End. She called us and said, hey, look, next year you're trying, she says everybody was foiling the board, so it's nothing new. But she called and said, hey, there's 2 teachers here, and one is more stern and one is more nurturing. Your child tends to do well in this particular environment. What do you think? And I think that when you look at early research, that sort of parental input and matching the kid up is a huge impact, right? If you work for a boss that hates you, you're never going to get anywhere, right?
I used to use a form where I had parents submit input on, tell me characteristics of your child, tell me characteristics that you would like to see in the teacher that they have.
Sure.
And I would use that information, but because I had 4 or 5 teachers in a grade level, I had that flexibility to do that.
But
I
they're
have 3
positively
sons and they're all
reinforced.
different.
Yeah, the positive reinforces the fact that teachers all got different styles and they can all be successful without having to challenge themselves or whatever to be different.
And then more teacher resources available in the media center geared toward those specific grade levels. Again, just providing a different type of focus. Additional advantages, students feel safe being with other students in that age band. Support staff such as resource teachers, specialists, media teachers may benefit from that narrower grade span. They may be able to participate on a more equal level in activities and be less influenced by older students.
The second bullet, I know we have reading coaches in every school now, right? Is there a difference in a K through 2 reading specialist and a 3 through 5 reading specialist? Is that a
Yes.
different degree?
It's just different. Teaching beginning reading is very different from teaching a little bit older readers. It takes a little bit different skill set. Most teachers who have training can do both, but our funding here in this district is pretty limited to providing the reading specialists for just K through 2, really first and second.
So-
We don't have as much money for the reading interventionist for 4th and 5th grade unless you're at a Title I school.
Reading is a high priority for me and I think the county and the state.
Yes,
So just a hypothetical, or maybe it's true, I don't know. We have a reading coach at school A, B, C, and D, and due to the number of students there, we can only have one, right?
And are you talking about reading interventionists or reading coaches? Because our reading coaches work with teachers on developing our teachers' skills for dealing with readers
Yeah,
at all
either
levels.
one,
And the
either-
interventionist works directly with the kids.
Okay, so either one, I guess, then really, it's the number of resources that are available to the teachers. So if you combine K2 and 3-5, you could, I think, if it's going on in my head anyway, you would double that amount of support. Because you're paying for them
Potentially.
anyway.
Well, I will tell you, like in our smallest schools, like under size 400, just kind of by ratios, the way that we staff, they don't necessarily have a full-time reading intervention person to provide reading recovery and the level of literacy intervention that is what our district uses. Our larger schools have one, they're staffed with one. Our smaller schools have to be staffed with a
Same
full
is true
five.
with
Just
media
because-
specialists.
So what would happen right now is that reading interventionist is going to two different schools, and you gotta factor in travel time, so you do lose some, you know, efficiency with the travel time. That's time that can be spent with children, and certainly if you get the school size to a more efficient state, you will be able to keep that a 1.0 person in those schools instead of splitting with 0.5, if
And we
that
have
is maybe what
0.5
you're
media
asking.
specialists too at our small schools,
Yeah.
and that's a struggle.
And it wouldn't cost you more because
We're already,
we're already doing it,
Already
they're just
paying.
spread over multiple
Yeah.
schools.
Well, and we even pay travel time for those teachers going back,
correct,
travel
sometimes we do.
expense.
Right.
That would
And
be
they
saved
have
too, because when they travel from school to school, we pay